Of course, it's going to be hard to get to the top, but someone's up there. So why can't it be me? That was kind of the attitude I went in with, a very driven kind of mindset. And so my first summer after my freshman year, I got an internship at the NIH in Bethesda. And so I worked there for that So the general process about reaching out for research is actually quite simple. You just have to have a lot of courage. You just have to be ready to face rejection and ready to just get in there and get your, hands dirty.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Today on our episode, we have Ananya Jambhale. Ananya is a junior majoring in bio and stats. She's the co-president of the Cornell Undergraduate Research Board. She's also a student advisor at the Office of Undergraduate Biology. Ananya, it's so nice to have you here with us today. If there's anything I missed, you can talk about your other campus involvements and everything else. I'm going to give the floor to you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here. Just a little bit more about me. I'm a junior, as Mohammed mentioned, and I'm intending to pursue an MD PhD. I hope to utilize computational methods to improve diagnostic measures as well as treatment efficacy. Also on campus, I am one of the head TAs for the auto-tutorial biochemistry course. I also do research in Dr. David Dieter's lab here at Cornell, but I also do research with a group at the NIH, as well as with a group over at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And outside of that, I also do some volunteering over at the Cayuga Medical Center. And so, I'm super excited to be here and ready to get started in this conversation.
Awesome. We're very happy to have you here, like Mohammed mentioned. And just from your intro, you have a lot of experiences that you can actually share with the audience and that we actually can learn from. But before we dive into college and the current environment that you're in, it would be really nice if we could kind of explore your background, some of your interests, and how your passion started. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself before college?
Yeah. So growing up, music was a big part of my life. It was something I did quite a bit of. I wasn't really a sporty person, but spent a lot of time with music. I did piano for 12 years. I sang both individually, but as well as part of a choir. But outside of that, I was also a really big nerd. I loved math and I loved data, and I enjoyed spending a lot of time doing that.
You mentioned you like data. Like, what's liking data at that age? Like, what does that look like?
Honestly, it was just being amazed by calculus. I remember my freshman year, I took AP calculus. I know, crazy. And in that class, the teacher was really just amazing. He showed us a lot about where it came from, although he never expected us to know it. And I remember there was one time he showed a proof of how the average of the roots of a function gives you the point of inflection. I think I literally cried in class, but it was just so beautiful because I really liked seeing how things kind of came together. And that's not something you see a lot in high school. A lot of things are here, memorize this and just know that. And something I really appreciated coming to college with a lot of courses actually talking about where things come from and understanding where they come from. So it was mostly for that reason, because I felt like math, you could kind of see where things came from, where everything else was a lot of just, you got to know this. So, yeah.
Wow. That's really awesome. AP calculus as a freshman, that's incredible. And that makes a lot of sense knowing who you are today. But, I'd love to talk about music a little bit more. Where did your passion for music start and how did you kind of explore it?
Yeah, when I was really young, there would be a lot of singing with my religious group. And so that was something that I always enjoyed doing. And so my mom kind of recognized that and she got me involved in music. So I started taking piano lessons when I was in first grade and kind of continued up until high school. And then I also got involved in singing. So I started in a choir and like a community choir when I was in sixth grade. And that choir was really, really amazing. It was the Columbus International Children's Choir. I was in it until I graduated high school. And it was just such a cool place because, as the name suggests, we kind of went different places around the world to kind of perform and sing, which was really exciting.
Did you guys go to different countries during the school year, or was that like during the summer or anything?
Usually during the summer. So we participate in this thing called essentially like the World Choir Games, which is like the Olympics, but for choirs. And we performed in two categories, classical music. And then we also performed in like a youth category, and choirs from all across the world will come to one place. And so when we first did it, it was in Cincinnati, Ohio. So that was like our first time because I'm from Ohio. And then we once went to Latvia in 2014. And then in 2018, we went to South Africa and competed, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm. From all of your experiences traveling and doing choir, which was the coolest place that you ever performed?
Yeah, I'd say like outside of the United States, definitely, South Africa. It was so cool to see the kind of culture there. Just music just kind of lived and breathed in these people. And it was just the most exciting thing to see. Also, their national anthem is just so much cooler than ours. No offense, but it's just so much more exciting. Yeah, would definitely recommend a listen. It's just so happy and exciting. But I will say that my favorite place to have performed is either Carnegie Hall or the White House. I performed at the White House in 2016.
Wow. So that was during President Obama?
Yeah. I actually got to meet him. I shook his hand, and he spoke to all of us, and we sang like a little bit of Carol of the Bells. And I will tell you, he sounds exactly like he does like on TV, like that kind of speaker voice. Like he totally had it and was very poised. And I also met Michelle Obama. It was just really cool, and we have a photo together, and I will cherish that forever.
So wait, did you guys sing? I mean, did they sing with you guys, or was it just you guys doing the choir by yourself?
Yeah, so we were actually invited to one of their winter banquets. And so they invited a whole bunch of choirs from across the country and to like perform at this banquet. And so then we also got to meet them separately for just a couple minutes. But there were a lot of really cool people there. And yeah, they spent a minute, they took a photo with us, and then we sang a little bit of a piece. And he actually started clapping before the piece was over, which is kind of funny. And then he got a little embarrassed, but it's really cool to meet someone like that in person.
Talk about performance at an early age. This is crazy.
Yeah,
Mohammed, I think I cut you off. What were you trying to say?
No, I was just gonna say like even the places that you guys went to, it's like they're not the normal countries per se, right? It's not Latvia. No one would think of going to like Eastern Europe, and then South Africa as well. So it's like experiencing that in high school must have been like so nice.
It was really cool to get outside of my little bubble. Just lived in suburban Ohio. You don't really the people you meet, of course, are really cool too. But it's nice to get more of a world view. And so obviously my parents are immigrants, and so we went to India. So it was nice to kind of get a perspective outside of just what I was exposed to. It really helped like broaden my worldview.
I think that's extremely important in general, especially in the development stage in high school, where you're trying to kind of like figure out who you are. Like, are you this? Which culture do you fit in? Especially for, I think, diaspora, or as children of diaspora. It's interesting because you have an interplay of different cultures that within your household, it's the same culture, and outside of your household, it's a different culture. And kind of balancing that is weird, or figuring it out is weird at a time, but I think kind of getting, firsthand exposure to those different environments is extremely helpful in understanding yourself and where you come from. And that's been kind of my experience too. Born and raised in Ethiopia till I was 10. And then I came to Chicago in the US. But then I think this summer before I came to Cornell, I went back to Ethiopia after 8 years. And that experience really helped me, kind of better understand my culture. I was really in touch with my culture to begin with, but just being away from the country itself was kind of a big thing. And so kind of touching in, it was nice.
I think we can, kind of transition into college. But I want to ask you, you mentioned you were interested in, math and data, even in high school. You're taking calculus, AP calculus in freshman year. So it kind of looks like you knew what you were interested in coming in. But did you want what was your mindset coming into college? Did you know what you wanted to do? Or were you trying to explore and talk to us through what you felt coming in as a freshman?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I feel like coming in, I was like, yeah, I know exactly what I wanted to do. It was the summer before that I got exposed to this idea of an MD, PhD, and I was like, maybe this is for me. I enjoyed research that summer. And then I came in and I was like, I really like neuro and I think this is what I want to do. And I thought I had it all figured out essentially. but I think growing up, you're a bit naive. And so even though I knew that bio and stats was something that I wanted to do, and it's definitely what I majored in, and I continue that interest, really figuring out the specifics of what you're interested in, like it takes a lot of time and a lot of like learning to figure out, like, I didn't know I wanted to work with transcriptomics, which is like gene expression. I knew I wanted to work in bio, but so what, where exactly? And it took a lot of different experiences in research and in coursework to kind of figure out exactly where in bio I wanted to put my interest in, exactly how I'd want to pursue my like post-college studies.
I think there's something really important that you said, exactly how. And I'm really curious about exactly how you kind of, figured out that you're interested in this, and coming into Cornell, decided, to kind of navigate this environment with that perspective. Like for me, I came into Cornell with an idea that I wanted to do CS and something with business, right? But still, I was like, all right, whatever. I'm here to explore to some degree. I don't know what's up. But I think you have a really different experience than I do, and a lot of Cornell students. So I think I'm really curious, how did you, even with your interest, how did you go ahead and kind of navigate planning for Cornell and kind of seeing a trajectory?
Yeah, exactly. So kind of the summer before I started, I was really excited about going to Cornell, and I recognized it was a really big place, and I wanted to make sure I utilized those opportunities. So I came to Cornell because of what a large school it was and how many resources and opportunities there were here. And so I really wanted to make sure I was doing the most, at least with what I could understand before I even got to college. So I spent a lot of time over the summer planning my coursework, as well as like looking into different faculty, as well as different clubs. I kind of came into freshman year with this rather stubborn mindset, but I said, my freshman fall, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to get into an a cappella group, I'm going to get into a research lab, and I'm going to join CURB. And so those are all things I actually ended up doing by the end of my first semester, and felt very accomplished. So it was nice to have a couple really concrete goals. But I also realized kind of within that first semester, it's kind of like a sink or float kind of attitude is what I realized. It's kind of like, you got to believe that you can swim. And you got to do it. It's kind of like one of those things when you realize, like, obviously everyone here is incredibly smart. And it's something that, can get to a lot of people. It got to me at the beginning. Like I was taking honors chemistry and was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm smart enough to do this, But then you realize that, like, if you put your mind to it, you can, do your best. There's plenty of resources, plenty of people to help. And then you just kind of, you swim, and you got to keep going. And so I think having that mindset that, like, of course it's going to be hard to get to the top, but someone's up there. So why can't it be me? That was kind of the attitude I went in with, a very driven kind of mindset. And I know that's not for everyone, but that was something that was really important to me. Otherwise, I felt like I would have probably lost myself, I think, freshman year.
Well, what I like about what you said is there's a lot of planning involved and also execution. And I think it's really interesting how you were already thinking about goals and things to achieve even before coming into college. Because for me, when I got into Cornell as a high school senior, all my life, at least in high school, the main goal was get into college, right? And then I got into Cornell ED as well, and I was like, okay, I'm done with everything. I said, that was the goal I was trying to reach, and then I'll think about Cornell when I get to Cornell. Right now, I'm just trying to chill. But it kind of speaks to, in a way, maturity and a mature mindset to actually understand, like you said, the opportunity that you have. And you already knew the clubs that you were trying to go into coming in, and I think that's really impressive.
Well, I think it gives me a bit of a false rep here. I think, like, obviously I ended up doing a lot more things that I had actually not planned on doing. And so, of course, there's definitely a need for flexibility. But I think the reason why I was so planning oriented was kind of realizing, like, yes, I was very much like you, get into a good college. Like, that was the goal from like day one, But what I realized was, college isn't the end, right? It's just a stepping stone that you have to utilize again and work hard to get to that place that you really want to be. And at that point, I was like, I want to change the face of medicine. Like, that was the mindset I had. And I was like, I can't do that in college, just at that level. I'm going to have to get to that next step and keep working. So rather than feeling like, I've reached it type of thing, I was like, now I get to work. I think that was kind of like the attitude that I took coming in, because I felt like this wasn't the end. it was just the start. If that helps any to understand why I had such a strong planning mindset.
I really like that too. It's interesting because that's something I kind of adopted after my first semester here. And it was similar mentality where it's like, this is not it. Like the current moment and who I am right now and what I'm involved in right now is not the end of it all, right? There's something in the future. And I think really figuring out what that means for you is really important. And there's something I kind of do every now and then, but it's like kind of like looking out 5 years ahead and looking at that vision of like, okay, who am I academically, in my personal life, in my social life? What do my relationships look like? What do my, the things that I care about look like? What do my values at that point look like? And to some degree, I think a lot of people go about it in terms of like, what's it called? The vision boards type of thing. In some ways, it is like that. But then I don't just leave it there. And I think this is where you kind of also did that kind of, helped you attain the things, is like breaking that down into, okay, that's 5 years ahead. What is 1 year from now going to look like if I'm going to get if that's going to be me from 5 years ahead? Once getting that 1 year down, it's like, what is 6 months from now going to look like if I'm trying to get that 1 year? And then making that even smaller into what is a week from now going to look like, or a month from now going to look like if I'm trying to get there in 6 months. And so I really like that. And it's really awesome that you started to have this mentality of planning things out and breaking them down into smaller pieces at an early stage. It's been extremely monumental in the way that I approach my goals. And I think it's played an extremely big part in how I attain my goals too. But that being said, it's extremely hard to kind of take out the time to do that, to kind of, make the time to do it and figure out the process. I think it's kind of different for everyone. So can you kind of speak on what your process was of doing this?
Right. Yeah. So kind of more on a mindset level, I think some of the things that I like to do, kind of similar to what you are talking about, think about the future, but at the same time, I also like to reflect on the past. I think sometimes it's really hard to see how much you've changed if you don't take like a second to look back. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, where was I a year ago? I think that's helped me a lot. I'm very much a perfectionist and I want things to be perfect. And it's so easy to get lost in this mindset of like, I'm not doing enough, or like, it's not good enough. But when I look at myself and compare it to what my expectations were for myself a year ago, it's vastly different. I've learned so much, and it's kind of unfair sometimes when I am so harsh with myself, when I don't, acknowledge how far I've come. And so that makes me even more excited to move forward. So that's one big thing. And then the other big thing is also just thinking about, why am I doing this? I think sometimes as college students, we get so lost in the assignments, the exams, this and that and friends. And there's just so much going on that just taking a moment every once in a while to remember, like, why do I care about this so much? What am I working towards? Sometimes that'll just help you get rid of the stress and just allow you to keep moving forward. Because then you get excited, right? You think about that end big goal, whatever it is, like starting a company or doing some amazing research or whatever it is that drives you. Like, that's exciting ultimately. And you kind of forget about what makes all of this so hard. So that in a mindset approach, that's more of what it is. But I guess more of like a practical level, it's just sitting down and making a list of things, like you said, breaking it down. And each person does it a little bit differently. For me, I don't like this idea of like scheduling out my time, but some people do. For me, I just have a really long to-do list that constantly has things on it. And so just breaking things down into like what you need to get done, but also taking that time. So for me, on my to-do list, I have all my courses on like what things I need to get done and like my extracurricular activities. But I also have a section on my to-do list that's about my career. What are things of that week that month that I really want to work on career-wise? So right now it's like looking into different labs to figure out my MD PhD application. But at some point it was like, go to this seminar or look into this lab or read this article, talk to this person, small things that I tried to put in there that helped me kind of work towards this bigger goal of my future.
No, I can relate with that because there's this thing I did about 2 years ago. And I read somewhere that it's a good thing. It's a good exercise to kind of sit down one day and write to your self 5 years ago. Previous you, like from 5 years back. And when I started writing that letter, I realized that that was a whole like different time. I was like different place. And a lot has changed, like you said, and realizing that, it actually all turned out to be great. And I didn't even imagine at that time that I would be where I'm at right now. But right now, when you're in the moment, you might get lost and you might not think that you're actually moving forward to the bigger goal. And after I finished writing that letter, I got so excited for the future Momo to write back to this moment, to this me, right? Because I was like, wow, a lot of things are going to change. The things actually move and change. And that's why and you kind of mentioned also writing the to-do list and everything. They are also like means to kind of you to kind of observe the small changes in the present as
Right.
well. So I can actually relate with that.
That's a really interesting, actually. I've never heard about that exercise, writing back to yourself. I always hear people writing to their future self, not to their past. And it's really interesting. I'm curious. Hopefully I make some time to do that. It seems really interesting, actually. And I think something that you kind of acknowledged in talking about that is a change of variability. And like that things just, without you being in charge or without you having any influence, things just change at the end of the day. And so adapting to changes, I think, is also extremely important in this process.
But just kind of chase after like opportunities that come your way. Sometimes some things will happen and you're like not sure whether this is the right thing, and then you'll look back, you're like, yeah, I'm so glad I took that opportunity. So I think that's a big part of it.
Exactly. But I'm really curious because we've been talking about academically and the more a nitty-gritty side of college. How about navigating the social life of Cornell when you first came in? What was your approach and how did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah. Actually, when I came to Cornell, that was my biggest concern. I was actually really, really concerned about figuring out social life and finding people that, were similar to me and that I would enjoy the company of. And so I think what helped me a lot was joining extracurriculars. My a cappella group was a really close-knit group of people that shared a similar interest. And I think that was a really great starting place. So I don't know if you guys know this, but a cappella, you audition the first week of classes. Okay. Like you go for it and you get accepted that weekend and then you start the week after. Like it's a very quick process. It's like 3 or 4 weeks before Club Fest. Like it's very quick. But having that community really early on helped me out a lot because these were older girls that my group is an all-female a cappella group. So older girls that really knew what they were doing and kind of, even though they were different majors and they had other things, it was nice to connect on something that we enjoyed together and still like come together and have someone I could talk to about things that I was struggling with since they have more experience. So yeah, finding a way to connect with upperclassmen is super important. Same with Curb. There were a lot of upperclassmen there that I got a lot of advice from about how to go about research or academics or courses. But separately to that, I found a lot of friends also through some of my courses and kind of their friends of friends, and just tried to keep a really open mind with who I met my first semester.
Yeah, I think it's important to have an open mind when meeting with people and talking to people. I think we kind of also mentioned last time that we talked that you did this thing where you would eat lunch or dinner with a new person every time.
I tried at least a couple times a week. I tried to do that. Yeah,
because that's the initiative even speaks to itself, because when you kind of find the right people at first, you're probably talking to a lot of people as freshmen, obviously, but then you kind of get sucked into a corner of groups of people, and I think you kind of lose the advantage opportunity that you're given at college of meeting all types of people.
Yeah, and I definitely fell prey to that my sophomore year. I had a group of friends and things were good, so there was no really reason to meet anyone else. But then I realized pretty quickly that, like, again, like you said, COVID hit, right, our sophomore year. And so going home and then suddenly only talking with a few people that I knew, as comforting as it was, it really sucked not to get to know some of the other people in my classes. People that had similar interests to me, but I had no idea who they are. They were just a picture on the Zoom screen, and so that's when I realized I really got to change that approach. And so anytime I've been presented with an opportunity to meet someone new or to connect with someone, I go for it. I think it's really important, especially in these times, and something I definitely want to carry forward into my career.
I think that's extremely important. And I think for me, I fell prey to that too, extremely. Like, coming to Cornell, you're like, I need to find a group of people that, I vibe with. At least for me, before college, I had a very tight-knit group of friends, and but we were also extremely diverse in all ways. And so I really liked that. And so coming to Cornell, I kind of had that perspective and that goal of finding that. And once I did find a group of people that was like that, it's easy to stay within that group of people and to, just be like, all right, this is comfortable for me. Like, I enjoy this space. Like, it's nothing new, nothing different on a daily basis. I kind of know how to vibe in this environment, and it's awesome. And it's great actually for freshman year. I think that was really nice because like you have a base, you kind of have some static movement in your life like that's not extremely changing. And that was good for me freshman year, but coming into sophomore year, I think I kind of did exactly what you did in terms of meeting new people and actively trying to meet new people. And that process, initially, it might seem weird, right? Like everyone has a friend group, everyone is out here within our friend groups. How do I go about, how do I go about saying, it's good, let's do this, let's do that. But I think it's exactly what I just said. What's good, let's do this, let's do that.
Yeah.
And for me, it kind of thinking about that, how do I go about doing that was a big process. But when I was actually like, that's enough thinking. Like, I'm tired of this. Like, let me just go ahead and say what's good. And it actually works out. So I'm curious, like, what was your approach in going about meeting new people?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely say my extracurricular. So it's kind of funny, but I came in entering college. And so, when you fill out the housing form and, you put in like, do you want a double or quad or whatever? And so I filled that out. And then I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be with a bio major. Like, I don't want to be with someone that I'm in classes with. I want to meet people outside of that because I know I'll meet people in my classes anyways. I want to meet people that are not in my classes. And my best friend is a government and English major, and we balance each other out so nicely because we have very different interests. And I feel like my extracurriculars added to that. So I met a lot of people that were from different backgrounds through my acapella group, but also through CURB because research is kind of in everything. And so you meet a lot of really cool people. And honestly, some of the best friends I've made have actually been sometimes even later in my college career. I met someone who I work with. This is the other co-president of CURB. And we finally started, I guess knew each other for a long time, but we finally started talking over the summer and we became very fast, close friends. And so I think what's really important with that is if, you meet someone new, it's nice to just be like, hey, let's, have a Zoom call or, grab coffee or lunch or dinner or something. And so what I found, actually, I had lunch with a friend earlier today, and he was talking about how he met a freshman recently. And so he said, the freshman energy is so great. Like, I've forgotten what that kind of naive, excited energy is like. As a junior, you're kind of burnt out. You're like, I'm done with undergrad, your internships and grad school and future. And so kind of seeing that freshman energy is really exciting. And I kind of agree. I think I've met a couple of freshmen and sophomores, and they're excited to get to know you because you have knowledge. But also it's exciting to get to know them because, they have so much life ahead of them and they're very excited about getting to know things. It brings a little more excitement into your own life. So I think it's just, even if it's you meet someone up over Zoom for an assignment, and then you're like, you start to chat with them. I had an incredible experience a couple of weeks ago. Someone DM'd me in one of my Zoom classes. She was a transfer sophomore, and she was like, I recognize you. Like, are you a stats major? And we ended up hitting it off, and we talked for a bit. And we really enjoyed talking with each other. We had very similar research interests, and it was really cool. Turns out she actually, I think, mistook me for someone else. But it was so cool, like just seeing that kind of confidence and just going and DMing someone on a Zoom class. Like, man, I haven't done that. That's so cool. So it's just something that, you get inspired by other people reaching out, which makes you want to reach out, and you realize like, it's no big deal. Everyone's just trying to meet new people. And if it doesn't work, oh, well, you'll probably never see this person again. And it's not a big deal,
There's definitely more to gain from it.
Exactly.
Than anything else. But speaking about that freshman energy and that energy and passion, feels like from our previous conversations and what we know about you as well, you're very passionate about research and research and applying it to medicine. But I'll let you talk about what you're interested in researching, and then we can talk about your experiences here, but also your internships and everything.
Of course, yeah. So research, as you mentioned, is a really big part of my life and something really important to me. It's, if you really stop to think about it, everything we know is based off of some sort of research. So, a lot of cred to it. So my interest in it actually started off with, I just wanted to get some experience before I came to college. And I did a short volunteering experience in a research lab the summer before I came to Cornell. And that experience really informed a lot. I didn't really the line of research is very different than what I'm ended up doing now. But it was a really great starting experience for me to kind of realize, I want to do data. I want to have better data literacy in science, because I think that's a really important topic. And a lot of scientists and doctors actually kind of are scared of numbers a little bit. So that's something that I'm personally very passionate about in my career. But really just kind of navigating coursework and just reading primary literature more recently has kind of helped, or, keeping up with scientific news in whatever way has really helped me kind of figure out what exactly I want to do, as well as the internships and classes. It slowly, somehow it's kind of figured out its way. And I'm not quite sure how I got here, to be 100% honest, but I'm really glad I'm here now. But I know that a lot of those experiences kind of shaped that way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually really curious because research is interesting, and we're at a big place that is extremely big in research, right? But I feel like it's hard to go find something to research or to find a research lab. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so part of me wanting to do CURB my freshman year was actually to help me figure out a research position. And so CURB has a peer mentorship program that's part of it. They actually match you up with an upperclassman that's in a research lab. And basically you get paired and they can kind of help you through that process of emailing professors, interviewing with them. And so I actually went through that process. I was one of the people there in that program. And that's how I actually got to my current research lab here at Cornell with Dr. David Deacher. And we study neurodegeneration in Drosophila, looking at a mutation in the sodium potassium ATPase, which is part of the nervous system. And essentially it causes spongiform neurodegeneration, which is fancy words for just holes in the brain. And if you see some of the images, it's kind of insane. And so it's similar to some human diseases too. So we're looking into kind of how exactly that works and how it progresses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wait, so in the program, what was the process? You said you kind of emailed professors, kind of reached out.
So the general process about reaching out for research is actually quite simple. You just have to have a lot of courage. And so the idea is, all you have to do is look into different research groups that you're interested in. It could really be all over. I know a lot of people talk about research in STEM, but there's research in every single field. If you're interested in trying it out, which I highly recommend everyone at least gives it a shot. Research isn't for everyone, but it's good to at least keep that as an option and explore it when you're in college. So you kind of look into groups or people whose research you're interested in, and then you can draft a simple email saying why you're interested in, and make it personal, not just a blanket email you send to everyone. Talk a little bit about why you're specifically interested in that person's research, and then you send it off. You can include your resume or not. Kind of depends. And then usually professors, of course, sometimes they won't respond because they're very busy. But, when you do get a response, it'll either kind of be one of two things. They'll either tell you let's have a meeting, let's talk about this. And usually that's a sign of they have space. They're just going to want to check out whether you're a good fit. And you can see if that lab is a good fit for you. Or there's going to be another kind of response of hey, we don't really have space right now, or, come back after you've taken this course. And so that's kind of another way that professors will respond. And so you can just kind of go from there, really. It's a very individualized process. You just have to just be ready to face rejection and ready to just get in there and get your, hands dirty.
And having that support from upperclassmen that went through the same experience in clubs like CURB and the program that you mentioned is, I think, really important.
Very.
And I don't think we talked about CURB. What else does CURB do? What is it about? You're president or co-president of CURB. So, just tell us and the audience of what you guys do in general.
Yeah. So my favorite way to, brand Curve is that we're the one-stop shop.
And having that support from upperclassmen that went through the same experience in clubs like Curve and the program that you mentioned is, I think, really important.
Very.
And like I don't think we talked about Curve. Like, what else does Curve do? What is it about? You're president or co-president of Curve. So just tell us and the audience of what you guys do in general.
Yeah. So my favorite way to, brand Curve is that we're the one-stop shop for undergraduate research. So, whether it's getting involved in research, presenting your research, connecting with faculty that do research, and even kind of starting the process of getting into graduate school, we're there to help you with all of it. Like I mentioned, the peer mentorship program, we also have this event called Curve Connects, which allows students to kind of meet in small group settings with professors, and they talk about their research in a particular area. We also have like outreach events in the community, which right now isn't quite the best, obviously with COVID stuff, but we usually volunteer at the Ithaca Science Center and Tompkins County Library to talk about research going on campus. We also have different ways to present your research and to see what research is going on campus. So we have a Curbex, which is like TEDx style talks, where people talk about what research undergrads. And then we also have our symposium, where students can present their research in poster session style. And then we have our, graduate student events. Really, we do a lot. Honestly, we really provide anything. So wherever you are in your undergraduate research career, we've got something for you, especially for incoming freshmen, not only the peer mentorship program, but just seeing what research is out there and seeing how undergrads can get involved in research is a really great way to inform yourself of maybe what you're interested or what processes you want to do or be part of.
I think it's really research is a topic that's kind of like overlooked to some degree. Like, it's very underrated, and I've understood that through my personal experience of kind of doing research, and I can relate with your with the process. For me, reaching out for research was a numbers game. Like reaching out to almost 60 faculty members and then getting like 3 responses, and then one of them saying yes. But what I found is no matter what you want to do, and I'm extremely interested in the business space, right, and the computer science space. What I found is no matter what you want to do, research is at each and every single, in each and every single community, whether it be in tech, in math, in sciences, humanities, at all stages, research is there. And my experience before doing this research, I was kind of going into like, okay, I have a summer that I'm free. It'll be cool to kind of spend a summer kind of messing around with robots and doing this type of thing and kind of working around these spaces and seeing, what's happening around those areas. But through my experience doing research, what I found was that it is extremely applicable to anything else that you do. The research method itself has been extremely applicable in how I went about kind of starting a company, interviewing people, talking to them, and asking questions, asking good questions, knowing, how to collect data and how to not have bias in it. And then in a bigger way, it's extremely important because for me, I talked a lot about this idea from going 0 to 1, which Peter Thiel is like he's a big entrepreneur in the e-ship space and a big investor in the venture capital space. He has this idea that innovation is important in a sense that instead of incrementing on something that's already been created, so let's say like a phone is created, you create an app for that phone. It's not going from 0 to 1, making that big change, but simply going from 1 to 2, right? It's not as big change as creating the phone, or like what Apple did, creating a better interactive way of using the phone. And so I feel like research fits in that place of making an extremely big impact where you're not adding incremental value to things, but adding extremely new value to things. And it applies in all places. And so I just wanted to point that out because I think it's extremely important. And it's extremely necessary for students to kind of think about it in some way, shape, or form. Because for me, it's been an experience that has opened up doors that I didn't expect to be there at all. But I'm really curious about your professional experience in research and how you went about getting those. I know that internships for us and internships for people interested in pre-med and that kind of route are extremely different. And I'm just curious what the process was like and how you ended up getting those positions.
Yeah. So mostly for pre-meds, as you mentioned, it's very different. It's usually you're going to do some sort of clinical experience or some sort of volunteering, or you're going to try and do research. And so for me, I was at the stage where I was like, I wanted to do an MD PhD and I was still trying to figure it out. So I wanted to get some research experience, full-time research experience outside of just my research lab here at Cornell, and just kind of see what different environments look like. And kind of like what you mentioned earlier, it's first time really being away from home, like without any sort of other support system. And so, I had an hour commute into work, and then I would work for like 8 to 10 hours a day. And then I come home and I can't cook for the life of me. So, stick to some staple meals of sandwiches and pasta. And, it just managed life on my own. And it was very, very new, but I learned so much about what I wanted to do professionally from that experience, as well as just kind of what it's like to do research full time. That's not something you really get an experience of in undergrad. I mean, you have a research lab that you maybe go in a couple hours a week, or like you do work a couple hours a week. But to really get that experience of what it's like to do research full time really helped inform me that, I think MD PhD is the way I want to go.
And NIH is like it's a big organization as well. And
it is.
Like, how did it feel being, working there? Like, was it intimidating at first, or were you looking forward for that experience working with really experienced people? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was kind of mix of feelings, I would say. Being in a new place, of course, it's a huge research facility and there's some amazing research going on there. And you meet a lot of really cool scientists. And so that in itself was just amazing. NIH has been this place where so many major discoveries were made. And so that was really cool, being on that campus and, being a part of that environment. It was also very isolating, to be 100% honest. Like my time there, you didn't actually see a lot of other interns. And so, we have journal clubs where you get to meet a couple other ones, but, usually you just kind of stuck to your work. And, in that process of that isolation, I definitely felt a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm a freshman, what do I know? Like, how am I doing research? Like, that's scary, and so my work at NIH actually dealt with postmortem human brains. So we're dealing with human brain tissue. And trying to figure out genetic associations with different mental health illnesses. But yeah, like this is serious research. Like this is going to get published in a paper. Like this matters. And having that kind of weight can be really scary. But what I realized was, they chose me for a reason, right? And they're not just blindly trusting everything I'm doing, of course. Like we talk about what I do. And so in that way, I slowly built up that confidence. Like, yeah, I can do this. Like, this is what I want to do. I got to have that confidence now. Otherwise, I'm never going to build these skills to be like, I can do this, And so that helped me a lot, I think, kind of get over that hurdle. But it was definitely a hurdle that was there. I don't know if you guys have experienced that in your side of things.
Definitely have, actually. But I'm really curious because landing an internship at NIH as a freshman that's interested in research, I think that's extremely big. I don't know the research landscape and what that kind of looks like, but it sounds big to me, right? And I'm curious, what do you think was the integral part in you actually landing that internship? What is it that you did looking back that you think is like, yeah, that had a big impact?
Well, I actually know exactly why I got selected, because the senior scientist I worked under, he actually told me at the end of the summer when I was leaving, like, I'm so glad I caught you for this reason on your application, and that you were able to come here and do a lot of work. And honestly, what it really was my interest in data analysis. Nothing about the science, nothing else. It was just that, my desire to apply what I'd learned in statistics to research. That was it. And then I think when I came there, it was a lot of just, putting in the hard work, and of course, like, stepping up to the bar, of course, they had certain expectations, and if you can exceed them, that's amazing. But I know it was exactly that. They were looking for someone that wanted analysis skills. And so that was really cool. That was an important thing for me. And so to hear that that was why I was chosen was really exciting. But at the end of the day, like I said, it comes down to just this desire to want to do something. Because I think with most science things, I don't know about in other fields, but even with research, it gets so niche very quickly. And there's no way you're going to have the full background for what you need to know to do any of the research you do. You learn on the job, and that's kind of how it works. You learn the skills you need. You learn the background. Like, yeah, some background is good. It's good to have a starting place, skills or background wise, but most of what you learn about what you're specifically doing, you learn while you do it. And just having that open mindset to like do it and put in the hard work, even if it's tough, is honestly, I think, the huge key to being successful in research.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you were essentially genuine in your application, and you generally talked about what you were interested in. And the easy thing about that is, if you're actually interested about it, then even the way you express it is different. You don't actually know how it is different, but it feels different when other people read it as well. And I think that's what that person recognized in your application. So that's definitely a lesson to take from here.
I think the passion too is extremely important. Like, you were a freshman, you didn't have the technical knowledge of like, oh, like this gene does this. Like, at least I wouldn't expect you to know that stuff at that stage.
Yeah, I didn't.
And it's extremely important because, like, I feel like, especially with internships for freshmen or internships in general, it's a case where you are coming in to learn at the end of the day, and you have to be passionate about the learning. And it's that passion that kind of, I think, is extremely important. And like Mohammed said, being genuinely interested in it, obviously shows that you're passionate about it, which is extremely important as well. But so after that summer, you went ahead and you took your MCAT sophomore year.
At the end of my sophomore year. Yep.
So what was your thinking behind that? How did you prepare, and how was it?
Yeah. So kind of my thinking behind it was, I had this very specific career trajectory. I still remember it was a rainy day that summer that I was at a research lab before I came to Cornell. And I just been introduced this idea that, maybe an MD PhD is an option for me. And I remember standing underneath, this porch right outside the research building and waiting for my mom to come pick me up and go home. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like reading, like what all you need to prepare to be a successful MD PhD applicant. I remember thinking to myself, like, man, this is going to be hard, Ananya. But if you want this, let's do it. Let's do it right. And so from that moment, I still like clearly remember that moment as a very like life-changing type of moment that I remember. And so from that point, it was a lot of planning. I knew that I wanted to go straight through to MD PhD. I didn't want to take a couple extra years and then do an 8-year program. I wanted to get started on my research, get started on my career. And so, kind of backtrack, I know that's the final goal, like what you were talking about earlier, right? So that's the final goal. Like, okay, what do I need to do? So, okay, then I need to start the whole, Cornell HCEC process my junior year, right? Because I'll interview senior year. And then, okay, if I want to do that then, so when should I take my MCAT? Usually junior year, but I knew that year was going to be busy. So how can I try and do it the summer before junior year? Okay, if I want to take it then what courses do I have to complete before then, right? And so kind of backtracking like that, I was able to figure out, front load all my bio courses, whatever I needed for the MCAT. And then just kind of now I'm doing a lot more of my stats courses, which has been helpful for my research. So a lot of it is just kind of trying to plan ahead and then realizing that things change, like courses will change or options will change, and you'll realize like you kind of learn to adapt, but having some sort of base plan there is helpful.
Real quick though, to get like a better understanding of it, like what is MD PhD? How is that different from a regular pre-med medical school route and everything?
Right. Yeah. So an MD PhD is actually both degrees. It's an 8-year program where you get both degrees. Usually it's structured where you do your first 2 years of preclinical medical school, and then you do your PhD, and then you finish out your clinical years of med school. And so the idea is a physician scientist is one that's able to actually change the status quo of medicine. That's the way that I love to explain it. And so, medicine is a practice. It's an art. And so I want to be someone that can change the way that we're actually going about it in the first place. And that's really cool to kind of be in that space, that translational research space where I'm dealing with people and real problems and putting the human side to my research, but also, incorporating my love for data and science and research to kind of help make that better, in medicine a lot better. So it's something that I've been interested in. I feel like I've solidified that belief with a lot of different experiences I've had here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm really curious. I know the MCAT is a really big thing in becoming a medical doctor, or even going to med school in general, or even applying to med school to begin with. So I'm really curious. So how did you prepare, like practically, how did you prepare as a sophomore or before that, knowing that, this is an extremely big exam that's going to determine the trajectory of my future. And just with that, like, I would personally be stressed the hell out. Like, I would actually be shaking my boots, to be honest. And so I'm really curious, as a freshman, I know a lot of people take this junior year. Some people take it senior year. I don't know a lot of people that take it their sophomore year. And so I'm really curious about how you actually prepped for the test. And what did that look like for you? And what are some of the things that you'd kind of change looking back?
Yeah. So for me, again, like knowing that was my goal, and in my head, I had no other option. That was like, okay, I'm going to do it this way, and that's how I'm going to do it. Very stubborn. And so kind of knowing that, I was like, okay, I really got to pay attention to my classes and like take things very seriously as I do them, so that when I'm at that point, it won't be so hard to review and look back on that material. And so that's kind of how I approached it. So I approached my classes with a very serious mindset, like not just learning for the exam or the final, but really trying to understand, so that when I had to come back to this material later, inevitably, to study for the MCAT, I'd have that knowledge and understanding. So that made it a lot easier. And then, just like any other standard test prep, you sit down, you create a plan that works best for you, and you work through review and practice exams, and you figure it all out. But I think the key there, again, is just planning and really being realistic with yourself about what you can do and in what time, and what works best for you to kind of review that material, because it's a lot. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
And also deciding which parts to self-study. So for me, like, I haven't taken physics until just this year, but physics is on the MCAT. So that was something I chose to self-study, because I wanted it to fit in my plan. And so I felt like, out of all the things, like if I had to study one thing, then, self-study, then I'd rather self-study physics than, something else. So there's a lot of considerations. And I think what's really important is you got to figure out what works best for you, and kind of work at that goal and start chipping away at it early on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious. Self-study, that's putting a lot on your own plate. You're accountable for yourself. A lot of people, there's no external accountability saying you have to turn an assignment by this day, so you have to watch these lectures and learn about this thing and read this part of the textbook to do this, right? And that's a lot on your plate, right? And just personally, you are going to have to take the time out of your day to do this, do this, do that, do this. And discipline is something that I highly value, and I'm developing it slowly but surely, and it takes a lot of discipline. I know that. So I'm really curious, how did you actually go about the self-studying process? I feel like self-study, I know you are the TA for the head TA for auditory biology, which in itself is self-study to some degree, but self-studying physics, a whole topic by yourself, is a different story. And so can you kind of talk about that process?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I had some background from high school, so it wasn't like I was going into it completely blind. But yeah, a lot of the topics were new to me. And I think what is really key for any sort of discipline is knowing why you're doing it, because that'll motivate you. For me, yeah, it's like a small sub goal of a sub goal of a sub goal, like to self-study physics for the MCAT, But when I think about, okay, the ultimate goal is to go to medical school and, do my MD PhD and be able to integrate and have this career that I feel like is really important to me, to like help people the way that I want to help people. I think that's what really helped motivate me and helped me kind of keep on track. But you're right. I mean, it's really hard to keep discipline when you have a million things coming your way. And so again, it's also important to kind of be realistic about what you can spend your time on and figure out where exactly you can put that time balance. Otherwise, you can get into this hole where you start to expect unrealistic things from yourself. And then it's really easy to kind of fall into this hole of like, oh, I can't do this, you know? So I think setting realistic expectations, but also reminding yourself why you're doing them, I think is honestly the recipe for what you need. And if you're still struggling with that, I think it's a good point for you to really reflect on, am I really doing this for the right reasons? Because if it's still hard, then it's like, you know, maybe you're not really being honest with yourself.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's actually crazy. Abe and I, yesterday we spent all night till like 3 or 2 talking. We were supposed to work, but then, you know, we got distracted and we were talking about discipline and how to get that discipline. And we both kind of noticed that the period of our lives where we were the most disciplined was when when we were more in tune with ourselves, in the sense that like you mentioned, you knew what you wanted to do, why you're doing it. And those periods of time when we knew that, it was easy to kind of stay in that mindset of, let me do this, I can actually do it, you know, stay focused. But then once you kind of drift off, you lose that connection with yourself, you lose why you started the whole thing, then it kind of becomes harder. And I just thought it was crazy because we were talking about it all night yesterday. And, you know, I woke up this morning as well, Abe, and I was just remembering our conversation. And, you know, I like that you mentioned it now. And I think that's really important, you know, just knowing why you're doing the things.
Discipline has been an enigma that I've been trying to really figure out for a moment. It's extremely important because, you know, like with goals, and I think there's some really important that you said, being realistic in the goals that you set. Because when you have 12 things on the to-do list and you are looking back and you're like, damn, I only did 2 of those things, it's like, oh damn, I failed to do 10 more things. Like I had 10 things over here, and I didn't do those. So instead of being like, yo, I hit those 2 goals that I had, like I checked them off, I did those things, it turns into a thing of like, yo, like I didn't do all this stuff. Like, damn, this is bad. And so it's I guess it's motivation. It could be motivation in a way, but also it has a negative effect. And I think that goes back to knowing yourself, like Mohammed was just saying. And it's an extremely interesting thing because in the past, discipline, I've thought about it in terms of like environment, you know, and I've talked about this on this podcast before too. Like, discipline is really important, but you can make discipline easier for yourself by controlling your environment. And that's extremely true, right? So like if, let's say, I don't want to, and this is an example I used in the past too, I don't want to use my phone. If my phone is right beside me, then it's easier for me to use it. But if it's not there, then it's not easy for me to use it. So I technically won't do it. But that goes, you know, so far. Like it's not, you're not gonna keep your phone out of your life for the rest. This is just an analogy too. You're not gonna keep your phone out of your life for the rest of your life. It's not gonna happen, right? And so as long as you can control your environment, as much as you control your environment, I think it's extremely important to develop that discipline. And the way to do that, I think, is knowing yourself, like what we just talked about right here. And I just connected those dots to some degree. You know, I've always kind of understood that, but like talking about it helps a lot.
Yeah.
But I know we are coming short on time. So I think it would be a really nice time to transition into some of the things you've done here at Cornell outside of Curb research. Maybe some of like the practical things, like the club, like the professional experiences, like the PCAT, PMRU, and at CMC.
So another big part is obviously the clinical volunteering as well. So as you mentioned, research is a big part because it's a big part of the career that I want. But so is clinical volunteering and understanding exactly what I'm getting myself into in the medical field. And so I've, volunteered with the PCAT group, and they basically help you kind of get some of those volunteer experiences, but also, think critically about, patient-centered care or people-centered care. And so kind of having those conversations and thinking about that, as well as, patient advocacy and those kinds of things, as well as being in the clinic and actually interacting with people, is a really powerful experience. And so I learned a lot from that. So I volunteered at the Mental Health Association before, pre-COVID times. And then this past winter, started volunteering as a COVID screener at the Cayuga Medical Center, and most recently have started volunteering at the PMRU, also at Cayuga Medical Center. And so all these experiences really have helped me get a better sense of what the medical field is. And I think it's really critical if you're interested in medicine to really get a good look at what being in that setting is going to be like. So be in that for the rest of your life, and it's hard. It's hard seeing people suffering. It's hard feeling like you can't do a lot for them. But that's the situation that, life is in, especially with all this, the COVID stuff. It's definitely been even more difficult. So as a COVID screener, it was hard telling, the loved one of someone that you can't go visit them. That's what the restrictions are, and you have these tough conversations, but the skills that you learn in these interactions and just meeting new people has been invaluable, and I'm sure I'll utilize them later. Also at the PMRU, essentially, mostly what I'm doing is just connecting with people and giving them more of like a moral, personal support. And so you get to learn a lot about these people's lives, and, it's so great to talk to people that have a lot more life experience than you do and have experienced life in a very different way and a different time. And so that's also opened my eyes a lot to not only how lucky and grateful I am to kind of have the life that I do, but also to be thinking ahead, what is really important in all of this, and really recenter myself in what's important. Because like you mentioned, with the self-discipline stuff, like you got to know yourself, but it's so easy to lose touch when you get lost and busy in everything else that you're doing in college. And so part of that self-reflection process and reminding yourself what's really important, health and, taking care of yourself is very important. I think that's something a lot of college students don't really do very well. It's something we take for granted. And so, these are all just things that I love to recenter myself, but also really helped me solidify that, yes, I want to pursue an MD PhD.
I think, having that connection with that human connection and understanding humans from their perspectives, their experiences is really important in any field. But I do feel that it actually might be more important in the field of medicine because, what you guys deal with is kind of uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable situations. You kind of see the, ugly side of it too. And, like you said, having these experiences right now will help you in the future as well, like in the sense that, okay, do I actually want to do this? And it also reminds you why you were interested in the first place. And if you don't have these experiences and kind of go into it in the future as well, you might get shocked. And getting used to all these tough realities of life early on, I think is really important, and that's why the experiences are good, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, medicine in itself is just innately human. I mean, you're dealing with real people with real problems that honestly we don't always know the answer to. And so I think that's why I want to do an MD PhD so much, just because not only am I looking at the human side of people and their medical problems, but I'm trying to see look at the human side of research and see how we can actually take this knowledge and this kind of intellectual curiosity and achievement and really apply that to humans and just that human side of life.
Definitely. I think, we talked a lot about the past, the current, present, and some of the things you want to do in the future. But, I think it would be nice to kind of dive a little bit deeper into some of your goals and how you're thinking about going achieving them. So, take the floor and talk about some of the things that you're planning on doing in the future and what your current trajectory in doing those things looks like.
Yeah, it's so interesting you bring up this question now, because I feel like the past week has been insanely transformative somehow with like just certain combinations of experiences and things that I've, witnessed. I feel like I've started to slowly have an orientation towards more of the future. Planning is great, but it can also help you get really stuck with what you've planned. And so to finally realize like I've done a lot of the things that I planned to do in college, and, now it's time for me to start thinking about the future and how I can move forward to get to that next step, one step closer to, helping people and, being part of this amazing community of physician scientists. And so, I think a big thing is, I've got a lot of basic research experience as well as basic clinical experience. So I'm really hoping to take that to the next level and start to feel like I'm making a more significant impact, coming up with questions on my own research wise and looking into things that can actually impact patient health. So recently, some of the work I've been doing, my research lab at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute has been more patient oriented, treatment oriented. And so I'm looking forward to do more of that, as well as, more personally and career-wise, I'd like to publish in one of the top 3 science journals to kind of move that along, and as more of a career goal. Also, I hope to, I'm starting the application process for MD PhDs this June. So I hope that I can get into a program that is able to support me with my interest in both medicine and research to the level that I'm interested in. And so I'm really looking forward to that, because I think I'm ready to kind of take on that next step of grad school and really dig in and start doing the things that I love even more than I am right now. And I guess, like, also personally and professionally, I just want to always remind myself of like where I've come from and what I've been through, and remind myself of this, like, like we were talking about earlier, like that freshman energy, always kind of feel like I have a little bit of that, always excited about what's new, what can I do, and just get involved in whatever way, wherever I'm at, and just like, I don't know, live life to the fullest. There's nothing to lose, right? So, yeah.
No, yeah, I like how we talked about it earlier too, but you talk about it as in the next step, right? It's not the end. There's more. It's just a stepping stone to another goal, a bigger goal, and it kind of talks to the energy, that freshman energy that you kind of still have. And I feel like, the experiences right now, what you're feeling is, the energy, that the excitement of, starting the next episode or chapter after college. And, I'm sure you'll do great.
I think it's really interesting because something that you said, actually, I was thinking about a lot. Of like, we're juniors now, right? But the mindset of being in college is already behind us. That's something that I've been talking to Mohammed a lot about. Like, I don't even think about next year in terms of college. I'm thinking about next year in terms of what am I going to do for the next thing after college. And so just wanted to highlight that and kind of give the audience the opportunity to internalize that, because college, I think, is the first 2 years of college. Like, college is the first 2 years of college, and then the last 2 years are not really college but career. And so have fun while you can. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, definitely, Ananya, no doubt as to your success. Really excited to see some of the things that you come up with and the impact that you make. So yeah, and thank you for hopping on this with us. I know you dropped a lot of gems that I learned from, and I'm hopeful that students out there are learning the same lessons or even different lessons. But I'm sure there's other students in the Cornell community that are trying to get in contact with you, trying to reach out, connect in some way, shape, or form. So if you'd like, please go ahead and share your how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So feel free to email me. I have my Cornell email, adj48@cornell.edu. Or also my personal email, which is my first name dot my last name, ananya.jambhale@gmail.com. So feel free to email me. I love to reach out to people and tell them about my experiences if it can be helpful in any way. Also feel free to reach out on Facebook or Instagram. Would love to connect with people, as I feel like I've mentioned like 20 times by this point, but I feel like everyone's got something to learn from everyone else. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd love to interact with you all.
So yeah, I'm sure.
Thank you for inviting me. This is such a great conversation and a great initiative. So very excited to see where this takes you all and takes everyone that's listening as well.